take projection.
It's Friday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Alabama Slam Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna. With me, as always, is my co-host.
What's up, guys? This is Patrick Akers.
And let's jump right into it. There's no need in wasting any time. We've got a big week in wrestling news. First off, we want to cover a few things before we get into our Forbidden Door predictions. We'll go over first the Adam Cole, Booker T situation from this week. And then we mostly want to cover Bryan Danielson's promo from last night's last night's Dynamite, and then also Christian Cage's promo, both setting up a couple things that could be big in the future. We probably won't discuss too many matches this week because there's a lot to cover on our predictions for the Forbidden Door. But let's jump right into it with Adam Cole, Booker T situation. This was something that didn't really catch my eye at first, but Patrick, you sent me a text the other night, and we're like, hey, what do you know about this? And I started looking into it, and it's kind of set off a controversy around the internet this week, man. This is something you and I discussed a month or two ago, at least, with Adam Cole and his body situation, and you were like, he doesn't look like the star that he could be. I don't necessarily want to call it body shaming, but for him to come in as hyped as he was at AEW after NXT, he came in with a little bit of a dad bod almost, and Booker T called him on it this week, and I don't think it was too bad what Booker T said. He just said he needs some more muscle on him if he wants to stay healthy in the ring and keep from getting injured. But he's gotten a little bit of backlash over that. So, Patrick, just give me your thoughts on what you think on that.
Yeah, you mentioned it right there at the end, is that from the comments, I didn't listen to the whole podcast, but the comments that I saw, it didn't seem like Booker T was talking about Adam Cole's physique in anything other than the fact that he's afraid he's going to continually get hurt. Did you see anything like he didn't mention no. He doesn't look like he can beat people up?
No, and what one of the things that stuck out to me was Renee Paquette. Is that how you say her last name?
Yeah, that's yeah.
She said that Booker T was body shaming and all this, and I didn't perceive it that way. I thought he was coming at it from a point of view of, hey, this dude, my man's gonna get injured if he doesn't muscle up a little bit. And I mean, he has been out for a couple weeks, and people had suspected it was because of injury, but it does look like he's going to wrestle at Forbidden Door.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, is that, the body shaming thing is real in sort of our modern day culture, right? The tricky part here, though, is that you can't help but talk about someone's physique when you're talking about something like professional wrestling. Like those two things kind of go hand in hand. Now, I think me and you both don't think that wrestlers need to be, shredded up meatheads the way they were back in the 80s. Everybody doesn't need to be Hulk Hogan.
Right. I mean, one of our favorites right now is Eddie Kingston, and he is most definitely not that.
Absolutely, yeah. But the thing about Eddie Kingston, though, is that his physique fits his character.
Right.
Rey Mysterio, a small guy in stature, but his physique fits his character. I think part of the disconnect that's happening with Adam Cole, and part of the reason why he might feel kind of, I guess, off in AEW, I think that's fair to say, from what he was in NXT. So, something is not happening here that we got back then. And it's that Adam Cole's style in the ring is kind of like a bruiser, right? It's a lot of strikes. It's a lot of elbows and super kicks. It's a brawling kind of style. But yet the dude, when he is face-to-face with Chris Statlander, he is significantly smaller than she is.
Yeah.
And so when people... and then, of course, this kind of set off a fire. Booker T's comments set off a firestorm for all of these wrestlers to kind of talk shit about some of these old guys that have podcasts, people like Eric Bischoff, people like Ric Flair, who I will agree with a lot of current wrestlers today. A lot of those old school kind of podcasts, a lot of them, if you listen to them, they do just kind of shit on the current day product and shit on a lot of the modern day wrestlers. And I think Hangman Page kind of pointed it out correctly when he said the only, paraphrasing here, like, I hope when I get retired, I don't sit around and shit on people who are trying to make the same kind of fortune that wrestling afforded me.
Right.
Which is a fair point, but I guess, yeah, the whole body shaming thing and Adam Cole's physique, we're kind of in a tricky landscape here when we're talking about pro wrestling. But like we said, Eddie Kingston's one of our favorites. He looks like a mechanic, but that's part of his character. That's part of what makes him appealing. So I don't think Adam Cole needs to be shredded by any kind of imagination. He doesn't need to be, 250 pounds of solid muscle, but, it might not hurt. And look, all this preface saying, he might have a health problem that we don't know about.
Yeah.
It could be something like that. If you go back, though, and look at his pictures from NXT and look at him now, like, no one was saying this when he was in NXT, and that is for a reason. He looked different than what he looks now, so.
Yeah. It's definitely a thing that you and I talked about. I thought, coming from me, like you said, Eddie looks like a mechanic. It fits the part, but Eddie doesn't prance around with his shirt off half the time either.
But, you even look at a guy like Rey Fenix, right? Rey Fenix isn't a huge guy in stature, but his style equates for that with his speed and quickness. Adam Cole doesn't have that. Adam Cole's not doing hurricanranas and all this other stuff, and walking on the top rope and stuff like that. He's not. That isn't his style. His style is more akin to somebody like an Eddie Kingston, but their body types are way different.
Yeah. I think I've spoken my piece on it. I don't know. Do you have anything else you think you need to share on that one?
No, and that's it. It's not to shit on Adam Cole. I don't want listeners out there thinking we're doing that. If there are really no other holes in his game except his physical appearance when he's in the ring. I don't think. The dude is a star on the mic, and listen, he still gets one of the biggest crowd reactions out of anybody on the AEW roster. So clearly, the way he looks isn't hurting him in terms of that sense. But we made this comparison last week. Jay White just seems like a more souped up version of Adam Cole, and when you put those two guys together, like what they're going to do at Forbidden Door, I don't think there's really any other way to look at that. Clearly, one dude is a 1A and one dude is, a 2, maybe a 1B if you want to be generous about it.
Yeah. Well, next up, we've got the Bryan Danielson promo from last night. Never did really say, unless I just completely missed it, never did really say what his health issue is, right? He just said he's not medically cleared.
Yeah, that was the big thing, is people were scared, obviously for good reason, concussion. That was the first thing that people thought of. He's had a history of that. That's what caused him to retire in the first place. He seems pretty adamant that he's not going to be out too much longer, it didn't seem like. It's just going to cost him, unfortunately, these next 2 weeks. But, I don't know. I haven't seen anything of what his actual injury is.
Yeah, there was that whole thing that after the show went off the air a couple weeks ago, he kind of got his foot caught in between the two, like the ring and the walkway or whatever, and people thought that might have been a work, but maybe something happened there. But he seemed like he was walking fine last night. You never know, though, I guess.
Yeah, and hopefully he comes back sooner rather than later. It is a big blow to not have him going up against Zack Sabre Jr. and have him be a part of this pay-per-view, though. It does suck. But, look, that was a hell of a promo he cut last night. And that's always been one of the weaker parts of his game, is his promo skills. But, man, since, really his run there leading up to WrestleMania 30, those promo skills have really kind of sharpened up. And like he said, a lot of people have said this sentiment this week, and maybe we'll talk about it at some future point in this podcast, episodes down the road. But for me, man, he might be inching closer to being the greatest wrestler of all time. When you look at just his body of work that he's done, and it's a shame because as far as his in-ring work, he was on the top of his game here in AEW. But maybe at some point in one of the future episodes, we'll kind of talk about how he's positioned amongst the all-time greats, because I don't think there's many people that are better than him that's ever laced up a pair of boots.
Yeah, they let him go for... It started to feel... It was almost a little too long, and then I think he felt it coming too, and he kind of wrapped it up. But, he had my attention for the full time he was talking. It felt like, at least 6, 7, 8 minutes. It was getting up there, but he had my attention. I had no qualms with them opening the show with him talking for that long. And he mentioned that there would be a replacement for him. I've got a thought on a recent WWE release. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, you and I, correct me, are you thinking Cesaro?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what everyone is kind of thinking. And I guess now is as good a time to talk about this as any, since we're on the subject. But, yeah, I've heard Cesaro's name floated out there. I've heard Johnny Gargano. Here's my thing about it is, and then I'll pose this question to you. Do you think, if it is indeed, in fact, Cesaro that's going to be here at the pay-per-view and he's going to end up joining Blackpool Combat Club, I don't want to necessarily say if you think that that's a mistake, but do you think that spot could have gone to somebody else to help booster them? Because one thing Cesaro's not going to need is he's not going to need any help getting himself over. So could they have used this, if they were going to add somebody to the Combat Club, would it be better suited to add somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, sure. Like, if Cesaro comes in, he doesn't need any help getting over. He's going to be plenty over. I think they've done a good job with Wheeler, Utah. That kid gets a hell of a pop these days. And there's been a couple of hints from Regal on people that I thought that he might be inching toward pulling into the club, but nothing's happened yet. So it would be kind of odd for them to go ahead and bring in Cesaro unless they turn around quickly and include one of the younger guys. But I think all signs are kind of pointing towards Cesaro for this one for sure.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, he fits that style. I'm just thinking, though, like, you brought up Wheeler. That's a perfect example about what that stable can do for somebody else. I mean, they've created another solid star in Wheeler Yuta. So could that position have could it have possibly gone to a woman? Is there somebody in that women's division that you could have aligned with Danielson and Moxley and Regal and helped kind of booster that up? Is there another young superstar that you could have done, a Wheeler Yuta, the same sort of thing that you could have done here? I don't know. It seems like it's going to be cool. Cesaro is a great in-ring talent, somebody that's been massively underutilized. So he'll be a good addition to that stable. I just don't know if that's the best way to use that spot there. But one thing I can say with certainty is that if it is indeed Cesaro, that match between him and Zack Sabre Jr. is going to be a hell of a match, and it might steal the show.
Really?
Yeah, Zack Sabre Jr. can go. Now, he hasn't been... he was out at Dynamite. He just kind of came out and, they talked about him, but he hasn't had a match in AEW yet. But, yeah, in terms of technical prowess, he is that British style... in the vein of a William Regal type of guy. And so I think you're going to see some hell of a mat wrestling showcase come the Forbidden Door pay-per-view.
Gotcha. I think that's all my thoughts on the Danielson promo. Do you have anything else you want to end with there?
No, let's talk about Christian Cage, because this is what interested me the most out of Dynamite this week.
Okay.
So we talked about it last week. Was that after the Christian Cage heel turn. One of the things I think I mentioned was this is an opportunity for Jungle Boy to really show what he can do as a singles competitor. And man, oh man, did Christian Wednesday night set the table perfectly for this feud with Jungle Boy. I mean, when you talk about the way to use a veteran star like a Christian, this is the perfect way to do it. He doesn't have to wrestle all the time, but when he gets into a feud, it feels like a big deal. And he had those fans eating out of the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
And if one of the things that you'll notice is they brought up Jungle Boy's father, which is the Luke Perry.
Yeah, my man's was cold-blooded for that one.
Cold-blooded, and that's the perfect way to do it. And knowing, I don't think it's in bad taste at all. I think Luke Perry, if he, if he's somewhere, if there is an afterlife, he's smiling, laughing, because he loved pro wrestling, and so he gets what this is, right? Like, this is the perfect opportunity for his son. But I think it's interesting, we have an opportunity here I think you and I are probably in agreement that if we're going to see Jungle Boy as a main eventer, his name can't be Jungle Boy. It's just not going to be able to happen. So is Christian introducing Jungle Boy's father an opportunity in a narrative sense to have Jungle Boy begin to use his real name of Jack Perry?
Yeah.
And you can use Jungle as a nickname. I mean, even JR to Jungle Jack Perry. Like, this is an opportunity to then do that. And then we have this thing with Luchasaurus, which I'm interested in a Luchasaurus heel turn. If this is what we're going to go with it, hopefully we get him out of the mask. But again, this is a perfect opportunity for Luchasaurus too. Let's see what this dude can do. Because now that we've turned Wardlow into a babyface, outside of Lance Archer, I really don't know if there's another. I guess Miro, but Miro's not technically a heel. I mean, people love him. He acts like a heel, but I mean, he gets cheered by the fans. So,
yeah.
There is a spot here for another
big
dude heel turn. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, Christian, cold-blooded, man. And this is a hell of a feud. So let's see what Jungle Boy's going to do. I would imagine we'll see Jungle Boy next week at Blood and Guts. And this is a feud that could really elevate him. And let's see what he has in him if there's a potential main eventer here in Jack Perry.
Yeah, I've liked him from the get-go. I was big on Jurassic Express up front, not really knowing anything about either of those guys before they started. They caught my eye. I like their athleticism. I thought they made a pretty good team. But I agree with you on a lot of those points about the Jungle Boy name, etc. It's kind of funny that Christian last night says, "I'm not here to help build up young kids or whatever."
Even though that's exactly what he's doing.
That's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I thought it was great. It was a great segment. Didn't really see that happening with Luchasaurus. I thought that was interesting. It was real kind of neat to see him kind of tuck his tail and walk out with Christian. I did think there was a half second there where Christian was gonna knock him on the back when he was, they were both exiting the ring, but that didn't happen. So, I think we will see Lucha turn on Jungle Boy as well. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody kind of sides up with him, not necessarily in a tag team formation kind of deal, but just somebody else in his corner, who would they have from the back that would kind of be in his corner if the tough gets going and he's getting the shit kicked out of him by Luchasaurus and Christian Cage at the end of a show or something. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. I did think it was cold as shit for him to call it his dad, and obviously that takes a certain level of trust between Christian and Jack Perry for him to be able to do something like that.
And I might be in the minority here, but I love when they do stuff like that. Particularly if whoever you're calling out was a fan of wrestling.
Yeah.
They would just get it. I would love for my name to just be shit talked. If one of my kids was a wrestler and, they were good guys and the bad guy was in the ring, running down my family's name and all this stuff, I would love it, man. Sometimes online fans, they'll say things are in bad taste. Can there really be anything in bad taste that's in bad taste in pro wrestling? It is kind of not to say that wrestling can't elevate itself to a higher artistic standard, because it can, but I mean, this is kind of lowbrow kind of stuff here. It's more a little bit more elevated Jerry Springer. So whatever. Let him talk about Luke Perry and let him call him a piece of shit and let Christian, flip off Jungle Boy's mom and tell her he raised a piece of shit. I'm all for it, man. It makes for great television.
Yeah. Well, I say let's move on to Forbidden Door. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Obviously, this coming Sunday, we'll probably do, I'm assuming most of what we talk about on the show next week will be Forbidden Door related. We may cover a match or two from Dynamite and or Rampage, but I got a couple of questions first off before we jump into this. Why are there so many different four-way matches? Is that a thing that happens in New Japan?
No, I think that, And there are a lot of multi-man matches. I think the reasoning here is just that we want to get as many guys on this pay-per-view as possible from both promotions. So, I mean, that's why the IWGP heavyweight belts is for a 4-way. That's why you have so many, 6-man tags and all this stuff. I think that's the reasoning there. You just want to get as many dudes on from the roster on this thing as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that point, but for like in the IWGP World Championship, we got Jay White versus Okada versus Hangman Adam Page versus Adam Cole. And as much as I think that match is probably going to rule, I think it'd be a lot cooler to see, like, I don't know, Hangman versus Jay White or Hangman versus Okada. I know they set it up storyline-wise why, Jay White isn't going to face Cole or whatever, but then, the next match, we got the All-Atlantic Championship. That's a 4-way match as well. And then you've got like 3 different teams in the tag team championship. To me, it could be a little convoluted, and it might be a little hard to keep up with. I just didn't know if that was a thing they did often over there or not. That was my first question. And the second thing is, I'm counting 9 matches, not counting the buy-in. This is going to be a 7-hour pay-per-view.
This is that old school country buffet where you just show up right after church and then you just fucking stay there until damn near 4 o'clock. And everybody got to roll your ass out to the front door.
Yeah, this motherfucker starts at, 7 o'clock that night? Or
how many did you count? 9? Did you count?
I counted 9.
So they added Shane Strickland and Keith Lee to the pay-per-view. Did you count that one?
No.
Yeah, they from this thing that I'm reading here, they and I don't know where this came from. I don't know if we missed something on Dynamite or if this was just a social media thing. But yeah, we got Swerve in Our Glory versus El Desperado, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that Japanese dude's name because I don't know. So they have recently got added, and it looks like that's going to be on the main card as well because we have Max Caster and the Gun Club on the buy-in.
Yeah. So yeah, if this thing starts at 7 o'clock, which I think it does, I'm gonna be late to work on Monday.
Oh yeah, I 7 hour. I mean, we'll do 5 for sure. I mean, the last one was 4.5. So, and one of the things you mentioned too, these multi-man matches. Just from experience, these things are incredibly tough to put together because you just have more things that can potentially go wrong. So I would imagine we're going to be disappointed by one of these multi-man matches, be it either a 4-way match or like one of these crazy tag team matches where it's just going to be kind of a shit show. And that's just my prediction. I don't know which one it's going to be. It won't be anybody's fault necessarily. It'll just kind of the timing and the chemistry and everything will be off. But I think one of these matches is just going to be an absolute stinker of one.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't doubt it. I mean, they're hard to keep up with from a production standpoint. Like, you got a handful of cameras running around, directors trying to keep up, and I know that they know when certain parts are kind of choreographed or whatever, but at the same time, those camera operators, it can get away from you pretty quick.
And we've mentioned that before on this podcast, AEW's kind of technical production issues that they've had with that kind of stuff.
Boy, they missed the break about 4 times last night on Dynamite.
Yeah.
Where they got cut off just mid-sentence because they just didn't hit the hard out. They got to work on that. I mean, sometimes they nail it, but last night something was way off because they missed it on almost every commercial break because I started keeping up. But the main match for the night, obviously, or at least to me, would be the interim AEW Championship, Moxley versus Tanahashi. That's obviously going to be kind of what carries AEW for the next few months until Punk comes back. I kind of feel like it's going to go to Moxley, just because what I said a couple weeks ago on the show about when he was the champ before, he was a champ to a TV audience and not to a crowd. And crowds love Jon Moxley. So I think it'd be a perfect time to put the interim title on him, let him bask in that glory for a little bit, and saunter around with the title, and just get to enjoy it because he was in 10 TV tapings. Basically, it was what it amounted to during the pandemic. I mean, what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, one of the things that I think we need to mention here is that there's going to be a lot of backstage politics in play too, just because you have two cross promotions. So I would expect that there are going to be no titles that change hands interpromotionally.
Yeah.
Which is why I think this Tanahashi-Moxley match is happening. And we mentioned last week, it's probably because Tanahashi is the highest, biggest name from New Japan that the powers that be are cool with letting get beat by someone from AEW.
Right.
So yeah, I think that this Moxley and Tanahashi match will be good. I don't know if it'll be the thing that we talk about the most out of Forbidden Door. I think there's some other matches down here that could potentially be that. But well, you got your first look at Tanahashi on Dynamite. What'd you think?
I mean, I think we're in for a good match for sure. I mean, you could see flashes of why the dude gets called the Ace last night. Like, for a dude like me that doesn't know anything about Tanahashi, it definitely is going to have a little bit more flavor going into Sunday night watching these two guys square off. Moxley's one of my favorites in AEW. I mean, he's got to be a top 5. So yeah, I think we're in for a hell of a match. I know they'll put on a great show. Will I still be awake if they put this one at the end of the show? We'll have to see. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be quite a match though, for sure.
Yeah, and the thing about Tanahashi is that clearly his best days are behind him. I mean, he's 45 years old and he's still out there at a main event level scene, but obviously he's not physically what he was, 20 years ago. But I mean, he's a big name. This is a big time thing for Moxley, for AEW to have a guy like Tanahashi, and to have New Japan in general just be a part of this Forbidden Door. I think is going to open up a lot of avenues for them internationally, which I think is the whole point of this, right? Like, you're trying to grow the global fan base. But yeah, I think we're both in agreement here. Moxley's going to walk away with the AEW championship. One thing I will say, I wouldn't be surprised if we get an MJF at the end of Forbidden Door. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. Obviously, they've kept this thing under wraps. But if MJF is standing over John Moxley at the end of this thing, like, I don't know. This could be pure fantasy booking, and they're not going to do it. But you would have to think at some point they need to keep this momentum going, so this storyline with him doesn't fizzle out. And I mean, what a perfect way to do it. Now, once you've put Forbidden Door behind you, and you have the New Japan and all those guys go off TV, you're going to have a lot of TV time to fill. They've dedicated a lot of time these past couple weeks, rightfully so, to introducing fans to these New Japan guys, but you're going to have to keep this show going afterwards. Dynamite and Rampage. So I think MJF, if he's there at the end of Forbidden Door, I mean, that's just going to set the internet ablaze. So just throwing it out there. Wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen either.
Yeah. Well, the next one I've got on the list is the IWGP World Championship. That's the 4-way between Jay White and Okada, and Hangman Page, and Adam Cole. So if we're going with your theory of them not changing belts, between companies, then it looks like Jay White will probably retain there, right?
Yeah, and I think he gets the pin over Adam Cole. Although Hangman does have a history with New Japan, what do you cap it at percentage-wise? Maybe a 5% chance that Hangman wins, but highly doubtful. If they put Jay White over Okada, then Jay White's probably going to be the guy that walks away with his belt at the end of it. Although that Okada pop, I told you it wouldn't be surprised if it happens. It was huge. And it was huge. And I forgot how massive he is.
Yeah.
He's fucking huge, man.
I had never seen a picture of him before. That dude was fucking gigantic.
Yeah, he towered kind of over everybody in that match. And so I think this is a big opportunity for New Japan to get some new eyeballs from fans here in the United States. Now, one of the things they're going to have to change is I don't know if listeners out there have ever tried their streaming service, but it's kind of a shit show for New Japan. They have their own service. I don't remember how much it is, but Kevin Kelly does the English translations or the English commentary for New Japan. But this is a good opportunity for them. But yeah, Okada, huge pop for him. But I would expect this match to be good. I don't think this is going to be one of the stinkers for the multi-man match. But yeah, I think Jay White comes away with it.
Yeah, that sounds right. And based on everything that I've kind of seen the last week or two, I'm leaning that way as well. I've got the AEW All Atlantic Championship. This is a 4-way. It's a Pac versus Miro versus Ishii versus Malachi Black. This one could be a banger. I mean, straight up. I don't know anything about Ishii, but like the other three dudes go hard. Especially lately.
If I was going to put my money, I would put my money on this one being the one that's the least talked about and probably the worst.
Really?
Yeah, just because with the addition of Miro and Ishii, their styles are so different from Malachi and Pac. Like if it was Pac, Malachi, and like two other guys that kind of were high-flying, athletic, that kind of fit that style. Not to say that Miro's not athletic, and we'll probably see a humongous dive from Miro that pops the hell out of the crowd at some point during this match, I'm sure. But yeah, I stylistically, I don't know how this one's going to work. So I'm hoping it's good, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is the worst one from the night.
Man,
who do you think's going to win it though?
Well, I was about to ask you the same thing. I don't know, man. I like Malachi a lot. I like Pac a lot. Pac's a guy that I was just kind of middle of the road on for a while, but the last few months, like the more I watch that dude, he just puts on banger after banger of matches. He's totally ripped, intimidating as hell. But I mean, you could say the same thing for Miro. Miro's great, and his every promo he does, whether it's pre-recorded or not lately, I feel like is pretty fucking awesome. So it wouldn't hurt my feelings to see a belt put back on him. His run with the TNT belt got cut short because of injury, and they basically fucked it up ever since then with that belt. But I don't know, man. It's tough. Which way are you heading in that one?
So obviously, I mean, we can throw Ishii's name out. He's not going to win this thing. So it's between Pac, Miro, and Malachi Black. I would say that I think the smart decision here would be Pac, just because his character is kind of the worst of those other two guys. So like Miro has a cool thing going on with this Redeemer, and he's on this quest to kind of get vengeance against God, which that's a hell of a story to try to be telling in pro wrestling. Like that's pretty cool. Like, we'll see where this thing goes. Do they do like were you watching wrestling whenever fucking DX went up against the McMahons and they had God in their corner and it was just a spotlight? No. Check that out on YouTube sometime. Yeah, they had God and it was just this big spotlight. That's one of these pay-per-views. I don't know. So maybe just a little tangent there. But Malachi also has a cool character, right? With the blackout stuff, the cultish stuff. So I don't really know if those two guys need a belt. So it would seem like you could elevate Pac here, giving him this first championship, and kind of helping his character a little bit. But it wouldn't surprise me if it's Malachi Black either. I would bounce between those two guys. I don't think Miro needs a belt. And honestly, I would like to see Miro challenge Moxley for the interim title. I would like to. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't know if they've done that yet. I don't know if Miro's competed for the World Championship.
I don't think he did.
Because he was the TNT champ for all that time. So
yeah. So next I've got the IWGP US Championship, which could be one of my favorites of the night. Will Ospreay versus Orange Cassidy. I've quickly become a Will Ospreay fan in the last few weeks after watching him wrestle, and his entrance, his gear, the dudes that are with him, their gear. One of those dudes last night had fucking badass gear coming in. I forgot which one he was. And I've been a Cassidy fan since I first saw him in AEW, and this could be a fun match. They put on a pretty good show last night in the triples match on Dynamite, and Cassidy looks like he's back in good shape. His arm's healed up, and he's ready to go. This one could be a banger for me. If we keep with the theory that the belt won't change hands, and obviously Ospreay will get it. I don't think they'd be ready. I don't think they're quite ready to put a belt on Cassidy yet. Anyway, he had a little push a little over a year ago or so with Jericho when they're building him up with all the 3 different matches he did with Jericho. Don't think they're ready to put one on him yet, though. So I'm going Ospreay. As much as I'd like to see a belt on Cassidy, I just don't think the timing's right. But this one could be a favorite of the night for me.
Yeah, I think this is going to be my vote for the one that steals the show. If fans out there had any doubt about Will Ospreay not being that guy, I think these past couple of weeks have proven that sentiment in the other way. Like, Will Ospreay is one of the best wrestlers on the planet right now. And kudos to him for taking this shot here to introduce himself stateside to these wrestling fans, and he has, I think, exceeded expectations. Like I said, I'd seen some of them, but not a lot of his work, and I think a lot of the work that I had seen was maybe from 5 or 6 years ago, where his style was a little bit different, it's a little bit more high flying. But man, he is so crisp in the ring. You can tell he's put some muscle on, and that Slumdog Millionaire move that the two of them did, like, if that when I saw that move alone, I was like, okay, they're going to go balls to the wall come Sunday night, and they're I think both of these guys have it in their mind we're going to be the thing that people talk about at the end of the show. But Will Ospreay's the guy here. They're not going to take the belt off him.
There were a couple of really, really good spots in that match last night. Cassidy got in one of his flying DDTs. That's a fantastic move. And like you said, the Slumdog Millionaire, that was awesome. I don't know if I had ever seen that before.
Cassidy's done that move. It's never looked as good as what those two guys made it look like last night. Yeah, it has. I think that Slumdog Millionaire is just that kind of float over stunner has kind of been one of his staple signature moves, but it's never looked like that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like the stunners and cutters. Just something about that move. Every time I see somebody do it, like, I get a little fired up. So it's always nice to see that happen. I think it'll obviously be Ospreay. No real shocker there, but I think it could be a banger of a match. Next up is the AEW Women's World Championship: Thunder Rosa versus Toni Storm. I don't think they'll cut Rosa's run this short. Do you? You think they'll keep it on her for a little bit?
I don't think they should. I think they should give it to Toni Storm, but I could see where they want to give Rosa a little bit more run here. But here's the thing: she's not really been. It's half and half, right? Half of it's the booking, but half of it is when she is in a position to do something, she's just not that great. Like, her promos aren't that great. That match a couple weeks ago against Marina Shafir, we talked about how bad it was that people were accusing Rosa of sandbagging Shafir.
Yeah.
So I think they've put a lot of stock here in Toni Storm these past few weeks. I think the right call here might be just to give her the belt and see what she can do with it. The women's division as a whole, though, really needs this match to do well.
Yeah.
It can't. This match can't be lackluster.
I mean, I think it's got a potential to be really good. It's probably the most excited I've been for a match in the women's division in a while. I thought not when Thunder won the belt, but it was one of the shows about a year ago. Thunder and Britt Baker got bloody as hell, and it was one of the best matches of the year, I thought, in the women's division. I mean, in general in AEW, just a hell of a match. But this one could be, it could be pretty big, and the women's division could use the bump putting the belt on Storm and let her run with it for a little while. Maybe it's just not Rosa's time. I'm not real sure.
And it is always, granted, both of these women are baby faces, but the biggest thing about babyface title runs is that a lot of the times when the baby faces have the belt, it's not that interesting as when they're chasing it, right? Like, you're always behind somebody when they're chasing something, but when they get it, it's a little bit tougher to continue to garner that interest from the fans. Also, like we mentioned, the booking hasn't done her any favors. I mean, she has barely been showcased on the show.
Yeah.
At all. She had the one match, and then basically everything since then has just been her coming out and either saving another babyface from a beatdown or like doing a little promo with Tony Schiavone or whatever. So, yeah, hopefully this is good. But it needs some help, and hopefully there's a Sasha Banks coming down the pike at some point.
Did they ever officially say if she's released? I never heard anything.
No, everything I've read, the lawyers are still working on it, but everybody perceives it to be a done deal. She'll be released.
Yeah.
And whenever she can be in AEW, I would imagine she's going to be there.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, I don't want to get off on too much of a side tangent, but it looks like Paige could end up possibly at AEW at some point.
Yeah, that kind of broke too. I think after we after we recorded last week, or maybe right before, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, she says she's medically clear, right? And WWE won't clear her, and that's kind of led to this rift. But she wanted to stay there, but they wouldn't re-sign her. So even if Paige can't wrestle in AEW, I think she's still an asset to sign to maybe have her manage somebody or.
Yeah.
She's a great talker. She's got a great look about her. She has a ton of social media fans. And there is some stock in just signing people that have a big fan base on their own so that maybe you can draw some eyeballs over to your product. So, yeah, there's that. There's also this weird Vince McMahon thing. So he paid hush money for some sex, and now he's just fucking coming out in front of Raw and SmackDown saying 2 words and dropping the mic and leaving. That's a little weird.
Barely on TV for the last several years, and then decides to come. That's just weird fucking timing. I don't know.
And one of the things that the rumors have always been out there is that a reason why so many of these guys in WWE continually have these jobs, and we're talking about guys like Laurinaitis, we're talking about guys like Kevin Dunn, like Michael Hayes, all these dudes. Granted, they're all talented in their own right, and I'm sure are good at their jobs, but I think the phrase that was used was they know where the bodies are buried, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can look up Vince McMahon's past, and while he should get a lot of credit for making professional wrestling here in America what it is, now he's not. One of the things that's asinine from a lot of young fans is that they just think that wrestling started with WWE and that wrestling doesn't have a fucking history that goes back to the damn early 20th century, way before Vince McMahon was even born, doing this carnival stuff in like the 1800s or 1900s and stuff like that. But anyway, so while he's great at that, he is, I think we would all agree, a pretty shitty person, right?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? I think.
That seems fair to me.
He's a ruthless kind of businessman that potentially, allegedly cover up the death of Jimmy Snuka's girlfriend. There, you can go watch that on Dark Side of the Ring and on Hulu. They get into that whole thing, the steroid trial, the stuff with Owen Hart. I mean, we could keep going down the list, whatnot. So I mean, it wasn't surprising when this came out, but it is weird to just have him prance out there at the beginning of the show as basically just a big fuck you to the board and then leave.
Yeah.
Like, everybody knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Nick Khan. He's pretty much fucking taken out every single McMahon in the WWE since he's got that job. So if their goal was to sell that company and that's what he was there to do, then yeah, hats off to him, man. He's done a hell of a job.
Yeah. Well, that's I didn't want to get us off base too much, but I felt like when you said Sasha, it reminded me about the Paige situation, so I figured we should cover that a little bit. And then, yeah, I think the McMahon stuff broke like right after we recorded last week, so didn't get a chance to touch on that. But the next up for the matches for the night, we've got the Ring of Honor and IWGP Tag Team Championships. So I'm a little unclear on that. So the winner will have both titles, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got FTR versus Jeff Cobb and Great-O-Khan versus Roppongi Vice. I don't know where to go on this one. So I'm assuming that Jeff Cobb and Great-O-Khan are the IWGP tag team champs. So something's going to have to give. Either the Ring of Honor belts go to New Japan or the IWGP belts come to FTR. And FTR is so fucking hot right now. I don't see it coming off of them. The ROH belts, that is.
Yeah, so here is, if we're going to poke a hole in our theory about no titles change promotions, here's the one place where that could possibly happen. Or you could have FTR win this match, and they become also the IWGP tag team titles. But something tells me that maybe we see Great-O-Khan and Jeff Cobb win, and that the reason why this is a three-way is because Roppongi Vice is going to eat the pin to help protect FTR. Because Jeff Cobb does have a history in Ring of Honor. And so, you know, when they hit a streaming deal, is FTR also going to defend these titles during Ring of Honor? Like, you have to get the Ring of Honor belts off of them at some point for some reason, right? Unless you're just going to have them working all the time, which I guess you could do technically. But having Roppongi Vice there to eat the pin, and then you give the Ring of Honor belts and the IWGP belts stay on Jeff Cobb and Great-O-Khan, and then you free FTR up to be able to then go after the AEW World Tag Team Champions while also saying, like, hey, we're still the best tag team because nobody's pinned us yet. Does that make sense, I guess?
Yeah, for sure.
But because this match was just kind of thrown to get, like, it was just kind of thrown up there.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that I could see happening there. But I mean, I think New Japan would be completely cool with the hottest tag team in America deciding to come over to Japan and work some dates. You know, I think they'd be cool with that. So, you know, it could be FTR. Who knows?
Yeah, that one could be interesting.
And FTR fits the style of Americans who have gone over to Japan and been really successful, right? We're talking about guys like Vader, talking about guys like Stan Henson, these like roughneck, blue collar, just beat the shit out of you type of wrestlers. The Japanese fans love those guys. So FTR would go over there and be huge baby faces as well.
Yeah, this one's probably the biggest question mark of the night.
Yeah, this is the only one where you can't really see where the booking is going, which makes it kind of interesting. I think for all these other ones, the booking is kind of written on the wall pretty explicitly. This is the only one where it's like I could see Roppongi Vice pinning Cobb and Great-O-Khan, because Roppongi Vice is a well-known tag team for New Japan, and both of those guys have spent time in Ring of Honor as well. So
true. Well, the next couple of matches is where it gets a little off the rails, I think, probably. And I'm not sure where you scatter them in. Probably earlier in the show. It looks like there's Sting and Darby Allin and Shingo Takagi. Excuse my pronunciation there. And Hiromu Takahashi.
yeah, your guess is as good
Sorry
as mine.
about that.
I mean, they ain't listening, so it don't matter.
Right. So there's the four of those dudes versus Young Bucks and El Phantasmo and Hikuleo. I'm not really sure what purpose this serves except to get Sting and Darby Allin and the Young Bucks in there versus some of these other guys from Japan, New Japan. I mean, you know, anytime Darby's out there, it's going to be entertaining. Sting looks to be back semi-healthy. You know, Young Bucks will put on a show, I'm sure. You know, this is a lot of people happening here. 8 people, it looks like, going at each other probably. You know, obviously it's a tag team, so they won't all be there at once, but I'm sure it'll get a little chaotic. And since there's no titles on the line, maybe they'll keep this one fairly short, keep the show moving. I don't really have any way to go on which way this one will turn out.
So I think the reason this got put on the card is because if you think back to the last 2 pay-per-views, Tony Khan has booked it in such a way to where the match that happens before the main event is just basically a car crash to get the fans amped back up for the main event, because these pay-per-views are so long and it's tough to keep that stamina going. So
Yeah.
I would say you see this match go on right before Moxley and Tanahashi, and these guys just brawl all over the arena and into the crowd, and it just becomes Sting jumps off some more shit like he's been doing this whole time. And I would say that Darby and Sting and those guys probably come away with the win. Because, like you said, there's no titles involved in this at all. Also, love the little callback with their tag team being called the Dudes with Attitude. Do you know where that stems from?
I don't.
So, back in 1990 at the Great American Bash, you had the main event was the Four Horsemen versus the tag team of Sting and Luger. I think the Steiner brothers were in there maybe, and one other person. But they were there for one night, and they just called themselves Dudes with Attitude. And it was just it, and that was what they were called, and then it stopped. They were July 7th, 1990 was the only time they were stable. That was it. So cool little callback there for fans if they remember that piece of wrestling history. But this is just probably gonna be a cluster, and it's gonna be wild, and there'll probably be very little wrestling happen during this match.
So there's two left. It looks like Jericho, Guevara, Minoru Suzuki versus Eddie Kingston, Wheeler Yuta, and Shota Umino. Furthering the Jericho-Eddie Kingston feud a little bit really is, I guess, the only purpose I really see for this one. They got Guevara and Jericho teamed up again instead of one of the guys from the Jericho Appreciation Society. I mean, I guess Guevara's part of that again, or now. Never was before, except for, inner circle stuff. So maybe we'll see some good stuff out of Eddie Kingston. Yuta's in there, so, we'll get some good stuff out of him for sure. But I don't know which way it'll go, but obviously I'd like to see Kingston and Yuta pick up the win in that one.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it'll go. Jericho and his guys got the win at the last pay-per-view over Kingston, so I doubt that they have two pay-per-views in a row where Eddie Kingston and his group kind of take the L. So
yeah,
this is also another one that might suck. I hope not, because we like pretty much everyone involved in this. But yeah, just stylistically, who knows about this one? So this one could be in the running for one of the worst on the card too.
Yeah. Well, we kind of touched on the last one a little bit already because we both thought Cesaro could be the mystery replacement. So it looks like it could be Cesaro versus Zack Sabre Jr. And I don't have any thoughts on that, honestly, because when I was watching WWE a couple years ago, Cesaro only wrestled a handful of matches maybe that I saw. And I don't know anything about Zack Sabre Jr. So where are you thinking this one ends up?
It's probably going to go to whoever debuts, I would imagine. Why would you debut somebody and then immediately have them take a loss? Although AEW has done that before, which is kind of one of the nonsensical things that they do sometimes, is that they bring a person in and then they just immediately beat them right off the bat. It fucking happened with Jay Lethal all the time up until but recently. So, but yeah, if this is indeed Cesaro, he'll get a huge pop and Twitter will go crazy and he'll put on a damn near a 5-star match with Sabre Jr. and probably come away with the win. And I guess going to Blood and Guts too. That's another thing, is that we have two back-to-back kind of big-time things that are happening with AEW. We got this pay-per-view, and then on Dynamite will be Blood and Guts against the rest of the guys. So
yeah, and they haven't announced a whole lot for that yet either. Not that I remember. So I'm excited to see how that turns out.
One of the things, since we've talked about all the matches here, I'll ask this question too and bring up this point. Is it a mistake to not have Wardlow involved in this pay-per-view at all, in some kind of capacity? There are so many people that are featured. Like, we couldn't find one match for him to do against somebody from New Japan?
Yeah, it is a little weird. Maybe they're saving him for Blood and Guts, but, they're kind of pumping him up versus Scorpio Sky whenever Scorpio's healthy again. So
Yeah, but he can't just sit on the
Surely
sidelines till Scorpio.
Yeah, that's what I was
gets
going to say.
healed.
Is surely they're not going to sideline him until then. But like, would it make sense to put him on Blood and Guts versus anybody?
Well, like you could have had. I mean, we'll go to this 4-way match. Him and Ishii could have had a real stiff match, and and Wardlow could have got the win over Ishii, and you could have thrown somebody else from New Japan in here with Ishii, or hell, you didn't even have that. You could have done, since this is an AEW title. I mean, you have Thunder Rosa and Tony Storm, both promotions within AEW. You could have just thrown another AEW guy in that match and had Ishii go up against Wardlow. And we've seen Ishii before. We've seen him and Kingston have a match, right? Was it the two of them or one of those guys?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Or, I mean, he could have gone up against Minoru Suzuki. And you could have had in the Jericho match, you could have just paired him up with Lance Archer, the way you did this weekend at Dynamite. So, I just think it's a mistake. If we have so many dudes on this from AEW that are getting a spot here, clearly we've put so much stock into Wardlow. Let's see this continue. I don't know. I'm just afraid it's going to cool off.
Yeah, I figure they'll... If Scorpio's not back by then, by the time they do the next big pay-per-view, they'll have Wardlow be heavily involved in that, I would have to assume.
Because Wardlow's talent, he's not like an Eddie Kingston or an Adam Cole, where he's so good on the mic that he can keep you interested week after week without ever having to step in the ring. That's clearly not his strong suit, which is why probably they gave him a prepackaged thing this weekend in Dynamite and not had a live thing, because prepackaged, they can get the lines out, hey, maybe say this again, do it better this time. You know, he can be coached up, you can edit it, it can make him be in a better light. His thing is that he's awesome in the ring and he's athletic. He needs to be out here beating the shit out of people.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I just don't know. It's just weird what they're doing with this. Clearly, they're going to put the TNT title on him. I think that's a foregone conclusion. And it's just bad luck that Scorpio happened to get hurt, but we have to give him some other things to do. We got to be flexible on our feet here a little bit and string some stuff together and keep some stuff going.
Yeah. Well, I think let's move on to what's done up real good for the week, unless you've got any final thoughts.
Nope, I don't. That's going to be it. $50? That's not bad for a pay-per-view.
No, I do wish, and I'll say it again, that they would change platforms off of Bleacher Report, or either have Bleacher Report get their shit together, because it does not work very well with the Amazon Fire Stick.
Also,
I'm
you can't...
not the only one that noticed that.
And you can't pause and rewind. At least you can on my Roku. I don't know if that's out there for other people. I got home about 2 hours into Double or Nothing and just had to pick up from where I was. So I've got to make plans to be at home when this thing starts Sunday evening. How is that still a thing in 2022?
Let me know when you figure it out, brother, because I couldn't tell you.
Because I don't think that Peacock and WWE have that problem. I'm pretty sure you can pause and rewind. Some listeners out there might correct us at this, but I think when I watched WrestleMania, I didn't start it when it started. I just clicked on it and it joined the live stream, but I was able to rewind back to the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing for me. I don't remember rewinding, but I jumped in just to watch the first Cody Rhodes match at WrestleMania. Yeah, I don't remember, because I think I just watched it and got out, so I don't remember much about the usability of the app. This will just be me shitting on the Bleacher Report app for Fire Stick again. And I told myself I'd buy a Roku before the next pay-per-view, but I don't think I should have to buy another device just to watch one thing.
Right. They should be able to get it together at this point.
Yeah, just get your shit together.
Maybe if they get over on HBO Max, things will be different.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, tell me what's done up real good for you this week, man.
So we had Father's Day this past weekend, and my wife got me 2 Swig cups. Have you heard of Swig cups by any chance?
I have not.
So they're kind of like Yetis, except, and this may be blasphemy coming from our part of the country down here in Alabama, where Yeti is ubiquitous on every single pickup truck and every single cooler that's out there with folks fishing. But this Swig cup beats the shit out of a damn Yeti. It is an awesome little cup. It fits in a cup holder. It comes with these nice little straws. Just the aesthetics of it are better. So she got me a plain black Swig cup, and then she got me a cool one that's leather that has a handle for coffee. And so I've just been using these things. I've drank way more water since Father's Day, which is probably good for you. So yeah, shout out Swig cups if you're looking for a insulated tumbler for your daily life. I think they're pretty, like $40 maybe, so not too bad.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, what's done up real good for me, I didn't have any idea what I was going to talk about today until this morning. I had to drive to Guntersville and back for work, and I started the audio book of The Storyteller by Dave Grohl. Going to try to do a little more reading and or listening to books this year, and this is first up for me, and so far it's so fucking good. I'm unashamedly a Dave Grohl fan. I love that dude. I think he'd be super fun to hang out with. All signs point that he's a super good dude in real life, and what you see is what you get with him, and he's a hell of a storyteller. So far it's been mostly stories about him growing up and getting into music and, you know, having his heart broken by a girl and writing songs and this, that, and the other, and he does a really good job with it so far, and I only expect it to be either as good or better for the rest. So I'm going out on a limb and saying that's what's done up real good for me this week.
Not trying to put you on the spot here, but where does Foo Fighters rank in terms of all-time American rock bands?
All time?
Yeah. Because, I mean, the Beatles aren't American, Zeppelin's not American, The Who's not American, so, like, where do you think? I mean, they're up there, right?
I mean, they have to be top 5.
I would think so. I mean, there's not many bands that could play in front of 100,000 people in a football stadium.
Yeah, like, and that's a really good question. I mean, and who would the other 4 be in the top 5?
Well, let me ask you this then: are Foo Fighters better than Nirvana? Like how much do you weigh cultural impact versus longevity?
What day is it? Because some days I'll say Nirvana, and then some days I'll say Foo Fighters. There have been times in my life where I've said Dave Grohl is 10 times the songwriter that Kurt Cobain was. You know, and this is not shitting on the style, but a lot of Kurt's songs were just fucking non sequiturs strung together. Not always the case. Like, he's got some really like strong, powerful songs, but you know, Dave's a hell of a writer, lyrically, and I mean, and melodically as well. And that, you know, that's part of songwriting is the melody. I think Kurt kind of caught lightning in a bottle. But would they still be going and as successful if he were still alive? It's hard to say.
Well, they wouldn't be writing songs titled "Rape Me" in 2022. You know what I mean? Like, that wouldn't be happening.
That's true.
Yeah, I could see that. I think you could definitely make the case, and I think it's the right case to make, that Kurt Cobain was a bigger cultural star and meant more to music at large at the time when he was around. But, like, you know, if you're on a boat with your family, you can't really throw on Nirvana in the background while people are you know, jumping off the back deck. You know what I mean? Like, Foo Fighters are kind of just prevalent in that kind of way, to where they're mainstream, and that sometimes it gets a bad rap amongst music fans, but I don't think that's the case at all. So I think it's an interesting case to make that, you know, Foo Fighters I think they are the greatest American rock band, honestly. I mean, the longevity. They'd be a bigger deal if they were in the 80s. The problem is that they're in rock and roll doesn't mean as much now in music as it did 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Maybe the only other band you could put above them from America would be Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
Is that a band though? I mean, that's Springsteen, like.
Yeah, but I mean they were.
Because in that case, then yeah, if you were going that, then I think Springsteen and
Then you
Tom.
have to put Springsteen. Yeah.
Springsteen and Tom Petty. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Petty for sure. Tom Petty goes above Foo Fighters.
But they're also like it's Tom. I guess you know more about music than me. Tom Petty to me seems more in the vein of a Bob Dylan than he does like Aerosmith. Like Aerosmith is a band.
Yeah.
You know, I know we got Steven Tyler. He's the star of it, obviously, but like. It's all of those guys collectively. If you're going to see Springsteen, you could change out the drummer and the bass player, and you're still going to see Springsteen because it's him. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's true, and it's how do you categorize that? Because some of Tom Petty's biggest hits were Tom Petty solo songs, which is it's weird to say Tom Petty solo songs because the Heartbreakers ended up playing on a lot of those records. I mean, especially the Wildflowers record. Wildflowers was essentially all of the fucking Heartbreakers. He just called it a Tom Petty solo record. They also changed drummers in that time, so that was kind of a weird period. But like fucking, You Don't Know How It Feels is a Tom Petty solo song.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes. And same thing with Free Fallin'. That's a Tom Petty solo song. That's not a Heartbreaker song.
Cool. So we settled it. Foo Fighters are the greatest American rock band. We said it on this podcast, and that's the way it's going to go. Now that's it. Everybody else can eat shit. Congratulations, Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters. R.I.P. Taylor.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what happens there. You know, they're doing some tribute concerts for him, like a memorial/tribute concerts. I don't know if it's just going to be a bunch of people playing covers or if they're going to do like have Foo Fighters with guest drummers. There's a lot of guests announced for that show, so I'm curious to see what happens there. Hoping there's like a live stream or something at when it happens, and see what all they got in store. But yeah, man, I think that'll do it for this week. Unless you got anything else we need to get in on.
No, I think that's it. You know, this podcast covers everything. It covers wrestling. It covers insulated tumblers and their place about
controversial rock and roll takes.
Rock and roll takes. There you go. We got it all.
Well, man, that'll do it. I say, we've got to do the things we do every week that all podcasts have to do. I want to point you to the Alabama Take on Facebook. Our podcast is part of a collective of people doing podcasts and writings. Patrick still writes for the site. And there's a bunch of new folks writing, a lot of young folks, a lot of different takes. I'm getting on up there in age. Patrick's not far behind. There's a new generation of people writing on the site. That's exciting. Check out Taking It Down podcast, and then Your Song Sucks podcast starts again very soon with their new season. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Alabama Slam Pod. We're still trying to grow those things up a little bit. Post goofy ass memes of mine and Patrick's head that I throw together in Photoshop in about 3 minutes and put zero effort into.
You can't even tell. It looks like you spend hours on it.
I always make our heads just a little larger than they should be because I think it's funny as hell.
I think my head just might naturally be like that, though.
I mean, I got a big ass head too. I ain't trying to cover that up, but yeah, man, follow us there. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, and give us a review on iTunes. That's supposed to help out. We'd be really appreciative. Tell your friends. Share with a friend. We're gonna start having some guests soon. I think we'll record one more show virtually, and then Patrick will be back at work, and we'll be recording at least those shows in person. And hopefully we'll have some folks on to share their perspectives in the not too distant future. And I'll be glad to be back in the same room recording with you again, man. I think we only got one podcast recorded before you got off of paternity leave, so I'm looking forward to that.
I might have to bring all my wrestling t-shirts and just hang them up in the office because I've gotten so used to this little back closet back here. Because
recording in the closet.
The recording in the closet because the house is chaotic at times with a 2-year-old and a 4-week-old just yelling and crying all the time. So,
hey, shit, speaking of t-shirts, I totally forgot that. Get on tpublic.com and search for the Alabama Take, and you can find your very own Alabama Slam podcast t-shirt. and or shirts from the Alabama Take, and we've got them that say "Done Up Real Good," and all kinds of stuff over there. We got T-shirts, coffee mugs, stickers, all kinds of shit. Anything you buy from there, the money proceeds from that go back to Blaine Duncan, one of the founders of the site, goes into maintenance and upkeep on the website and the fees that go along with all that stuff. So, show us off a little bit to your friends. I've got an Alabama Slam podcast shirt myself that I haven't worn yet. I'm waiting until the right time. I never like to be that guy that wore my own band shirt, but I will proudly sport my Alabama Slam podcast shirt soon in the not too distant future. I think that's going to do it for us, man. Hopefully we'll have a great show Sunday night to look forward to at Forbidden Door, and you'll hear from us for sure next week with our thoughts about that. Thanks, y'all.
Goodbye, Corey.